I'm Miranda, 34, and last month I was fired as Chief Engineering Officer from Henderson Tech Solutions, my family's company. After 12 years of building our flagship product and growing the business tenfold, my parents called me to the boardroom and terminated me for being too expensive. Dad actually said, "Business is business, nothing personal," while they'd already hired my cousin Ethan for half my salary. Now, 3 weeks later, Dad's calling me panicking because everything's falling apart. I wonder if he still thinks it's just business. If you're watching this from a toxic workplace or dealing with family betrayal, you're not alone. Before I dive into how my parents' decision backfired spectacularly, take a second to hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Family drama hits differently when it's also your career on the line, and trust me, this story has plenty of both. To understand why being fired by my own parents felt like a knife to the heart, you need to know our history. I wasn't just an employee at Henderson Tech Solutions. I was the daughter who sacrificed everything to help build my grandfather's legacy. I graduated with an engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon, one of the top programs in the country. While my friends accepted lucrative offers from Silicon Valley giants, I chose to come back home. Technology wasn't just my passion, it was in my blood. My grandfather Stanley started our company as a small electronics repair shop in 1975. He was a brilliant man with calloused hands and endless patience, teaching me to solder circuit boards when I was just 9 years old. When Grandpa Stanley handed the reins to my parents, Grace and Walter Henderson, in the early 2000s, it was still a modest operation with 15 employees. Mom handled customer relations with her warm, personable approach, while Dad managed the business side with methodical precision. They complemented each other perfectly, at least in business. I remember the day I told them I wanted to join the company. It was 2011, graduation was approaching, and I just turned down a junior engineering position at Microsoft that would have paid nearly twice what our family business could afford. "Are you sure about this, Miranda?" Dad had asked, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose as he reviewed my resume. Yes, I still had to submit one. "We can't offer you what these big companies can." "I don't care about that," I'd said. "I want to build something that matters, something that's ours." Despite being the owner's daughter, I started at the bottom. Dad was adamant about this. No special treatment. My first position was as a junior systems analyst with a salary that barely covered my student loan payments. The other employees watched me closely, waiting for signs of entitlement or expectations of advancement without merit. Instead, they saw me arriving first and leaving last, volunteering for the projects nobody wanted, and learning every aspect of the business. Those first years were tough. I lived in a tiny apartment with roommates while friends from college bought houses. I drove a used Honda, while classmates posted photos of their luxury cars. But I was building something I believed in, and that mattered more than material possessions. By my third year, I'd earned enough respect to lead my first development team. We created a network management tool that attracted our first major corporate client. By year 5, I was heading the entire engineering department and we'd grown to 40 employees. The years that followed were a blur of 18-hour days, product launches, and expanding office space. Our breakthrough came in 2017 when I developed our flagship product, SecureNet, an integrated security and networking system that offered small and medium businesses enterprise-level protection at an affordable price point. The timing couldn't have been better. Data breaches were making headlines, and companies were desperate for solutions. SecureNet became our golden goose, accounting for over 60% of company revenue within 2 years. By 2023, Henderson Tech Solutions employed over 120 people and serviced clients across 8 states. We'd become a respected regional provider with a reputation for reliability and innovation. And through it all, I led our engineering team, now 30 people strong. With the same principles Grandpa Stanley had instilled in me: integrity, innovation, and putting customers first. My team respected me not because I was a Henderson, but because I was genuinely good at what I did. Marcus Delgado, our senior security architect, once told me, most family businesses have at least one useless relative on payroll. You're the opposite. You work like you've got something to prove every day. And he was right. I did have something to prove, both to myself and to everyone watching. That's why I continued declining recruitment offers from larger companies, even when they dangled salaries that made my father's eyebrows rise to his hairline when I mentioned them in passing. You could make double with them, he'd said after a particularly aggressive recruiter had called me for the third time. But it wouldn't be the same, I'd replied. Here, I'm building our family legacy. He'd smiled then, placing his hand on my shoulder. And doing a damn fine job of it. Those moments, the pride in his eyes, Mom bringing homemade lunch to my office during crunch times, the family business dinners where we'd excitedly discuss future plans, they made the sacrifices worthwhile. I delayed starting my own family, pouring everything into Henderson Tech instead. My boyfriend Derek understood, thankfully. After 5 years together, he still supported my dedication to the family business, though he occasionally reminded me that life existed outside the office walls. But looking back, I can see the warning signs I chose to ignore. About 18 months ago, my parents' focus began shifting noticeably from product quality to profit margins. Board meetings, once centered on innovation and customer satisfaction, increasingly revolved around cost-cutting measures and operational efficiency. We need to be leaner, Dad would say, reviewing expense reports with increasing scrutiny. Everyone needs to justify their value. Mom, usually the mediator, began echoing these sentiments. The market is getting more competitive, Miranda. We can't just be the best anymore. We need to be the most efficient. Around this time, my Uncle Frank started appearing at family gatherings more frequently. Frank was Dad's younger brother, the business genius who'd made and lost several fortunes in various ventures. With him came my cousin Ethan, who dropped out of engineering school in his junior year because it was too theoretical and had bounced between jobs since then. Dad and Uncle Frank began having long conversations behind closed doors. Ethan started shadowing different departments to learn the business. When he spent 2 weeks in engineering, I noticed him taking extensive notes and asking questions about our processes, team structure, and especially our compensation packages. Just trying to understand how a successful department runs, he'd said with that easy smile that reminded me of Uncle Frank's, charming but somehow never quite reaching his eyes. I mentioned my concerns to Mom over our monthly mother-daughter lunch. "You're being paranoid," she'd said, patting my hand. "Your father would never make major decisions without consulting you, especially about your department. You're the backbone of this company, Miranda." I believed her because I needed to, believe that 12 years of loyalty and success had earned me a permanent place at the table. I couldn't have been more wrong. The day it happened started like any other. I'd arrived at 7:30 a.m. to review the progress on our government contract proposal before the regular 9 a.m. staff meeting. My assistant Jenna stopped me in the hallway, looking uncomfortable. "Your father wants to see you in the main boardroom at 8, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Rachel from HR will be there too." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Did he say what it's about? No, just that it's important and shouldn't be delayed. I nodded, trying to ignore the unease building inside me. Rachel's presence meant this was either about hiring or... I pushed the thought away. Surely not. Not after everything. The boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. Dad sat at the head of the table, back straight, face impassive, his business face. We called it in the family. Mom sat to his right, eyes focused on the folder in front of her. Rachel, our HR director, occupied a chair near the door, laptop open. "Miranda," Dad said as I entered, gesturing to the chair across from Mom. Not next to them, across from them. The positioning wasn't lost on me. "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing. "I have the team waiting on feedback for the government proposal." "This won't take long," Dad replied, his voice carrying that clipped tone he used with difficult vendors. "We've made some organizational decisions that impact your position." My heart began hammering against my ribs. "What kind of decisions?" "Please sit down," Mom said softly, still not meeting my eyes. I slowly lowered myself into the chair, placing my hands flat on the table to stop them from shaking. Dad cleared his throat. The board has conducted a thorough review of our executive compensation structure relative to industry standards and company performance. The board. He meant himself, Mom, and Uncle Frank, who'd been given a seat 6 months ago. We've determined that certain positions are overcompensated relative to their market value and contribution to the bottom line. I stared at him, disbelief flooding through me. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Dad slid a document across the table. We're restructuring the engineering department. Your position as Chief Engineering Officer is being eliminated, effective immediately. The words hit like physical blows. Eliminated. Effective immediately. This is a joke, right? I looked from Dad to Mom, searching for any sign that this was some bizarre test or misunderstanding. Rachel spoke up, her professional mask firmly in place. It's not a joke, Miranda. We have your final compensation package here, including severance according to company policy. Company policy. The policy I'd helped write years ago, insisting on fair treatment for all employees, never imagining it would apply to me. Why? I managed to ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Dad adjusted his glasses. Your total compensation package has become a significant burden on company finances. Your salary, benefits, and executive bonus structure represent nearly 4% of our annual operating budget. Because I've earned it, I said, my voice rising. The department I built generates over 70% of company revenue. The company's success is the result of management decisions and team efforts, Dad replied coolly. No single person is indispensable. No single person. 12 years of my life reduced to an expendable resource. Who's taking over engineering? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Mom finally spoke, her voice unnaturally even. Ethan has agreed to step in as Director of Engineering Operations. His compensation package is more aligned with our budget goals. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not just fired, but replaced by my cousin, who lacked both the experience and education for the role. Simply because he'd work for less. Ethan? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. He didn't even finish his engineering degree. He knows nothing about our systems, our clients, or our team. He's been shadowing the department for weeks, Dad countered. And he has fresh perspectives on operational efficiency. Fresh perspectives? I repeated, anger finally breaking through the shock. You mean he's willing to do whatever you tell him for half my salary? Miranda, Mom said warningly, this is a business decision, not a personal one. I turned to her, the person who was supposed to be my advocate. You said I was the backbone of this company. You promised me last month that Dad wouldn't make major decisions without me. A flicker of guilt crossed her face before she composed herself. The financial realities changed. We all have to make sacrifices. All of us. I looked pointedly at Dad's expensive watch and Mom's designer outfit. Or just me. Rachel interjected smoothly. Your personal belongings have been packed. After signing these papers, Jefferson will escort you to your car. Jefferson. Our security guard. They were treating me like a potential threat, me, who had built the security system protecting their intellectual property. You're escorting me out? I don't even get to say goodbye to my team? The humiliation burned almost as much as the betrayal. We'll announce your departure formally this afternoon, Dad said. It's better this way, cleaner. I looked down at the severance agreement. 2 months' pay. After 12 years. The legal minimum. And if I don't sign? Then unfortunately, we can't process your final payment or release your accrued vacation time, Rachel replied. I signed. Not because I agreed, but because the alternative meant giving them another reason to paint me as difficult or unstable to the team I'd built. As Jefferson walked me to my car, carrying the box of my office belongings, I caught a glimpse of Ethan entering the building. He had the decency to look uncomfortable when he saw me, quickly averting his gaze and hurrying inside. My phone buzzed as I sat in my car, still too stunned to start the engine. It was a company-wide email from Dad. We announce with mixed emotions that Miranda Henderson has decided to pursue other opportunities outside Henderson Tech Solutions. We thank her for her years of service and wish her well in her future endeavors. Please join us in welcoming Ethan Henderson as our new Director of Engineering Operations, who brings fresh energy and ideas to the role. Asterisk decided to pursue other opportunities. The final insult, rewriting my firing as my choice. I turned off my phone, pulled out of the parking lot for the last time, and allowed the tears to finally come. 12 years of my life. My identity. My family. All gone in a 20-minute meeting. The first week after being fired was a blur of shock, anger, and grief that cycled through me like a storm that wouldn't break. I barely left my apartment, alternating between staring at the ceiling and compulsively checking my phone for messages that might explain this nightmare away. Derek was my rock during that time. He came over daily, bringing food I couldn't taste and offering comfort I struggled to accept. "They'll realize what they've done," he said on day 3, sitting beside me on the couch where I'd been curled up for hours. "They can't possibly think Ethan can handle what you built. You don't understand," I replied, my voice hoarse from crying. "They don't care if he can handle it. They just care that he's cheaper and won't question them." Derek, who worked in financial analytics, couldn't comprehend the depth of the betrayal. He came from a family where careers were individual pursuits, not interwoven with your entire identity and relationship network. "You've got options, Miranda," he insisted. "Your reputation in the industry is stellar. You could work anywhere." But that was the problem. Henderson wasn't just where I worked, it was who I was. Every line of code, every client relationship, every late night and early morning had been invested in something I thought was mine, at least partly. Now I wasn't sure what belonged to me anymore. The family fallout was equally devastating. My phone remained silent from most relatives. My cousin Sophia, who worked in the marketing department, sent a brief text. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea this was happening." Then radio silence, likely fearing for her own position. Social media twisted the knife further. Uncle Frank posted a picture of himself, Dad, and Ethan in the office, captioned, "Proud of this young man stepping up to new challenges. The future of Henderson Tech is bright." The comment section filled with congratulations for Ethan's well-deserved promotion from family members and business associates who knew better but chose politics over truth. Only a few members of my engineering team dared to contact me. Jamie, my senior developer, sent a carefully worded message. "This is wrong on every level. The team is in shock. Let me know if you need anything." Marcus called once, speaking quickly and quietly as if afraid of being overheard, saying the office atmosphere had turned weird and tense, and that Dad had installed cameras in the engineering department for security purposes. By the end of week 2, the shock had hardened into something colder and more focused. I began taking inventory of my skills, my finances, my options. The severance would cover expenses for 2 months, and I had savings that could stretch to 6 if needed. But the career setback was incalculable. Being fired as an executive, especially from a family business, raised red flags to potential employers. What had gone wrong? Why had her own parents deemed her unworthy to continue? I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Winters, who specialized in family trauma and workplace issues. "What you're experiencing is a dual betrayal," she explained during our second session. "Your parents violated both family trust and professional trust simultaneously. It's like having the ground disappear from under both feet at once." "I gave them everything," I said, the familiar anger rising again. 12 years of my life. I turned down better offers repeatedly to stay loyal to them. "And that's what makes this so painful," she nodded. "The unwritten contract of family loyalty works both ways. They broke that contract. So, what do I do now?" I asked, the question that had been circling in my mind endlessly. "That depends," she replied. "Do you want to repair the relationship, or do you need accountability first?" The question hit me like a revelation. Did I want repair, or did I want justice? The answer wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. At home that evening, I made 2 lists. The first contained everything I'd sacrificed for Henderson Tech: higher salary offers, work-life balance, starting my own family, developing my own ideas independently. The second list held what I'd received in return: Professional growth, yes, but also years of working under the shadow of nepotism accusations, constant pressure to prove myself, and ultimately, disposability when financial concerns arose. The scales didn't balance. Not even close. You need to decide, Derek said when I showed him the lists. Fight back or walk away cleanly. Walking away means they win, I argued. Everything I built becomes permanently theirs, including the SecureNet architecture that came from my thesis work. And fighting back means what? A lawsuit? Against your own parents? I didn't have an answer yet. But the universe, it seemed, had been listening to my inner conflict. That evening, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months, Grandpa Stanley. My grandfather had semi-retired to Florida 5 years ago, maintaining his board position but rarely involving himself in day-to-day operations. Dad had gradually reduced his influence, citing his outdated perspectives on business. Miranda, his familiar gravelly voice came through the speaker. We need to talk about what's happened. My throat tightened. You heard. Of course I heard. You think something this significant happens in the company I built, and I don't know about it. His indignation was oddly comforting. This isn't right, and it isn't smart. Dad seems to think it's both. Your father. He paused, and I could picture him removing his glasses to pinch the bridge of his nose, a gesture he made when deeply troubled. Walter has made some decisions lately that I can't support. But there's more going on than you know, and you deserve to hear it. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? That call changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just a victim seeking closure. I was potentially a player in a game I hadn't realized was being played. Whatever you decide, Derek said as we discussed the upcoming meeting with my grandfather. I'm with you. But be careful. Family business disputes get ugly fast. I nodded, remembering all too well the stories Grandpa Stanley had told about business partnerships gone wrong, family feuds over companies that span generations. I never thought our family would become one of those cautionary tales. That night, I dreamed of the company headquarters. Not as it was now, but as it had been when I first joined, smaller, humbler, but with a clear sense of purpose and family unity. In the dream, I was trying to enter the building, but my key card wouldn't work. Through the glass doors, I could see Dad and Ethan shaking hands while Mom looked on proudly. I kept trying my card, increasingly desperate, as water began rising around my feet. I woke up gasping, the symbolism not lost on me. I was drowning while being locked out of what I helped build. As I prepared to meet Grandpa Stanley the next day, I made a decision. Whatever information he provided would determine my next move. But one thing was certain, I would no longer be passive. Either I would walk away completely, rebuilding my life and career from scratch, or I would fight for what was rightfully mine. Either way, Henderson Tech Solutions would never be the same. And neither would I. Grandpa Stanley suggested meeting at Westlake Park, away from any family or business connections. When I arrived, he was already there, feeding ducks by the pond, looking older than I remembered, but with the same sharp eyes that missed nothing. My brilliant girl, he said, embracing me. I'm sorry about all this. We sat on a bench overlooking the water, and he got straight to the point. Your parents are in trouble, Miranda. Financial trouble they've been hiding from everyone, including you. What kind of trouble? I asked, surprised. The company had seemed profitable based on all reports I'd seen. Walter made some bad investments outside the business. Real estate ventures with Frank that went sideways. They needed capital quickly, and the easiest way to free up cash was to cut the biggest salary on the books. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. So I wasn't fired because of company finances, but to cover Dad's personal investment mistakes? Partly that. Stanley nodded grimly. But there's more. They're positioning to sell the company. Sell Henderson? The concept seemed impossible. To whom? Secura Systems has made overtures. They want our client list and the SecureNet technology. Walter thinks he can get $20 million. Secura was our largest competitor, a corporate giant that had tried to hire me away twice. They'd been trying to develop a product to compete with SecureNet for years without success. But that doesn't make sense, I argued. Why fire the person who created and maintains the very product that makes the company valuable? Stanley's expression was grim. Because you're too ethical, Miranda. You would have objected to the corners they're cutting to make the company look more profitable than it is. Ethan is just a figurehead who'll do what they say. They needed someone manageable for the transition period before the sale. The betrayal took on new dimensions. Not just fired to save money, but removed as an obstacle to selling off the family legacy. There's something else you should know, Stanley continued. The government contract renewal for the Department of Energy? It requires security system upgrades that only you fully understand. Ethan's already struggling with the preliminary work. A small, vindictive part of me felt satisfied hearing this. Good. Let them see what happens when they replace experience with obedience. It's not just about them now, Stanley warned. If they lose that contract, over 40 employees could lose their jobs in the restructuring that would follow. People who were loyal to you. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders. My team didn't deserve to suffer for my parents' poor decisions. What are you suggesting I do? Go back and help them after they threw me away. Stanley shook his head. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm making sure you have all the facts so your decision is fully informed. Whatever you choose, I support you. I'm just sorry I wasn't more involved. I trusted Walter to honor what we built. As we parted, he pressed a flash drive into my hand. Financial records, emails, meeting minutes from the last 6 months. I may be semi-retired, but I still have board access. Read it all before you decide anything. That night, Derek and I went through the files. The picture they painted was disturbing, a systematic plan to reduce costs, inflate projections, and position the company for quick sale while extracting maximum personal benefit for my parents and Uncle Frank. This is corporate malfeasance, Derek said, pointing to emails discussing ways to temporarily boost performance metrics. If they're presenting these numbers to potential buyers without disclosure, it's fraud. The next morning, I received a text from Jamie. Something's wrong with the SecureNet kernel after yesterday's update. System throwing critical errors for 3 clients. Everyone's panicking. An hour later, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. The first contact since firing me 3 weeks ago. I let it go to voicemail. Miranda, we need to discuss some technical matters with the platform. Call me back as soon as possible. No apology. No acknowledgement of the situation. Just an expectation that I would come running when called, like a loyal dog regardless of how it's been treated. I didn't call back. Instead, I reached out to Jamie and arranged to meet at a coffee shop far from the office. It's chaos, she reported, looking exhausted. The update Ethan pushed through corrupted the authentication protocols. Government systems can't connect securely, and 2 major clients are threatening to terminate their contracts. Why did he push an update without proper testing? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Pressure from above. Your dad wanted to show progress on the government specifications, so Ethan rushed it. He doesn't understand the architecture like you do, nobody does. Jamie risked her job by bringing me internal documents showing the extent of the problems. The SecureNet system, my system, was failing because crucial maintenance procedures were being ignored and updates were being implemented without proper understanding of the interconnected components. The team wants to help, but we're afraid, Jamie admitted. Your dad installed monitoring software on all our computers and has been holding daily progress meetings that feel more like interrogations. After Jamie left, I called Derek. His venture capital contacts might provide insight into what a company like Henderson Tech would be worth and what options might exist for me professionally. I could introduce you to Catherine Vaughn at Meridian Ventures, he suggested. They specialize in tech acquisitions and might have interest in someone with your expertise. The meeting with Catherine was enlightening. After hearing my situation and reviewing my portfolio, carefully omitting any proprietary Henderson information, she leaned forward with interest. Let me be blunt, Miranda. Your parents made a catastrophic mistake letting you go, especially if they're positioning for acquisition. You're the asset that created their primary value proposition. So, what options do I have? I asked. Several. You could start fresh with another established company. You could consult. Or, She paused meaningfully. You could create competition. Create competition? Start your own company focusing on the next generation of what you built at Henderson. Not copying their IP, but leveraging your expertise to develop something better. She slid her card across the table. If that path interests you, Meridian might be interested in providing seed funding. The idea took root immediately. Not just finding another job, but building something new, something truly mine that couldn't be taken away. I spent the next 2 days researching non-compete clauses in my employment contract and consulting with an attorney specializing in intellectual property. The news was better than expected. Your contract has a non-compete, but it's overly broad and likely unenforceable, explained Josephine Barnes, the attorney. Plus, they significantly weaken their position by terminating you without cause. As for the IP, the core architecture of SecureNet came from your graduate work before joining the company. You can't use their specific code, but your knowledge and expertise are yours to use. Meanwhile, my father continued calling, each message more urgent than the last, but still without apology or admission. On day 5 after the system failure, my mother called. Miranda, please, her voice trembled. I know you're hurt, but we're still family. The company needs you. The company fired me, I replied coldly. And family doesn't discard family when it's financially convenient. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. Then what was it like, Mom? Explain it to me. Her silence was telling. That's what I thought, I said, ending the call. Later that day, an email arrived from my father with a contract attached. They were offering a consulting arrangement, 3 months at double my previous salary to resolve current system issues and train appropriate personnel. Not rehiring me. Not acknowledging wrongdoing. Just buying my expertise temporarily before continuing with their plan to sell the company. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Jamie reported that a major client had formally submitted notice of contract termination, citing security concerns. The government contract was now under review, with auditors scheduled to inspect the system the following week. Dad's next call came at midnight, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Miranda, this has gone far enough. Your point is made. The company is at risk now. My point? I haven't made any point, Dad. I'm just no longer working for a company that didn't value me. We'll reinstate you, he offered, desperation evident. Same position, 10% raise. Not good enough, I replied, surprised by my own calm. I want CTO position with a board seat, or I don't come back. That's not possible. The board structure is something you control, I interrupted. You, Mom, and Uncle Frank make the decisions. Don't pretend otherwise. I need to discuss this with the others, he hedged. Discuss quickly. According to my sources, you have less than a week before the government contract is in serious jeopardy. After hanging up, I wondered if I even wanted to return. The idea of starting fresh, building something that was truly mine, had taken firm hold. But there were the employees to consider, people who had been loyal to me and might suffer if Henderson collapsed. Derek found me staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. You don't owe them a rescue, he said softly, reading my thoughts as he often did. I know, I sighed. But I owe something to the team I built. Then make your decision based on what's best for everyone long-term, not just what patches the immediate crisis. The next morning, I scheduled another meeting with Catherine at Meridian Ventures. If I was going to make a decision that would impact so many lives, I needed to understand all possible paths forward. If you've ever been at this kind of crossroads, where your professional future and personal relationships collide in the most painful way, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment about how you handled your own career crisis moment. Sometimes the hardest decisions come when our trust has been broken by the very people we thought would always have our backs. The technical problems at Henderson Tech escalated faster than even I had anticipated. By the following Monday, exactly 1 month after my firing, the situation had become critical. Jamie's texts became increasingly alarming. 3 more client systems went down overnight. Ethan's blaming the development team for sabotage. Your dad just fired Alice for insubordination when she tried to explain the real problem. Alice had been with the company for 9 years and knew the network infrastructure better than anyone except me. Firing her wasn't just unfair, it was self-destructive. Dad's call came at 8:17 a.m., just as I was finishing breakfast. "Miranda," he began without preamble, "we need your technical input on the SecureNet issues. I can have a courier deliver the system logs to you today." No hello. No how are you. Not even an acknowledgement of Alice's termination. Just straight to his needs. "Good morning to you too, Dad," I replied evenly. I saw that Alice was fired. Interesting choice, considering she's one of the few people who might have helped fix the problems. His irritation crackled through the phone. "We don't have time for this, Miranda. The Department of Energy is threatening to terminate our contract if the security vulnerabilities aren't addressed by Friday. That sounds like a significant business problem. One that a qualified chief engineering officer could have prevented." "Are you enjoying this?" he demanded, watching the company struggle while refusing to help. "I'm not refusing to help," I corrected him. "I'm refusing to provide free consulting to a company that determined my contributions weren't worth compensating appropriately. If you want my expertise, you know my terms. This isn't a negotiation. This is family." Funny how it becomes about family when you need something, but it was just business when you fired me. After a tense silence, he shifted tactics. "What would it take to get you to look at the system logs?" "Just a technical assessment, nothing more. My consulting rate is $500 per hour, 4-hour minimum, payment in advance." The figure was deliberately high, double the market rate for top-tier consulting. That's extortion. That's the market value of specialized expertise in crisis situations. You're welcome to find someone else if the price is too high. To my surprise, he agreed, though not without making his displeasure clear. 3 hours later, a courier delivered an external hard drive containing system logs and diagnostic reports. One look confirmed what I'd suspected. The authentication protocol corruption stemmed from Ethan's hasty implementation of updates without understanding the underlying architecture. I prepared a detailed report outlining the technical issues, but not their solutions. This I sent to Dad along with an invoice for $2,000. His response was a terse email with confirmation of payment and a demand for solutions, not just analysis. "The diagnosis was what you paid for," I replied. Implementation of solutions would require a separate consulting agreement. Meanwhile, I continued moving forward with my own plans. Catherine introduced me to potential investors who were intrigued by my vision for a next-generation security platform. 2 of my former team members who had quit Henderson after my firing agreed to join my venture if it materialized. Derek's firm offered temporary office space while we developed our business plan. The second crisis at Henderson erupted 3 days later. Jamie called, her voice tight with stress. Treadwell Financial just terminated their contract. $3 million annually gone. And they're threatening legal action over the data exposure during last week's outage. Treadwell was Henderson's largest private sector client, a regional banking group whose security I had personally guaranteed for years. Their departure would be devastating to the company's finances and reputation. Less than an hour later, Mom called. Unlike Dad's demanding tone, hers was emotional, playing on our personal relationship. "Miranda, sweetheart, I know you're hurt. What happened wasn't fair to you. But we're still family. Families make mistakes, but they forgive each other. We need you. Do you acknowledge that firing me was wrong?" I asked directly. Her hesitation told me everything. "It's complicated. The financial situation is the result of Dad and Uncle Frank's poor investment decisions outside the company," I finished for her. "Grandpa Stanley told me everything." A sharp intake of breath. "Your grandfather shouldn't have involved himself in this. He built this company, Mom. He has every right to be concerned when he sees it being dismantled for a quick sale." "That's not," she began, then stopped herself. "We just want what's best for everyone, including me." Was firing me best for me? Another painful silence. "I thought so," I said softly. "When Dad is ready to offer me CTO position with a board seat, call me. Otherwise, I've said all I need to say." That evening, Derek and I finalized the business plan for what would become Phoenix Engineering Solutions, a new company focused on advanced security integration systems for mid-sized businesses and government contractors. The name was deliberately symbolic, rising from the ashes of my career at Henderson. The next morning brought another crisis call, this time from Dad's cell phone, but with Uncle Frank's voice on the line. "Miranda, Frank here. Let's cut the drama and get to business. The government auditors will be here Monday. If they don't certify our security protocols, we lose the contract. We need you in the office tomorrow to fix this mess. Name your price." "My price hasn't changed," I replied coolly. "CTO position with board representation." "That's not on the table," Frank snapped. "We're offering a 6-month contract at executive consultant rates, plus a performance bonus when the government contract is secured." "Then you don't actually need me as badly as you claim. Good luck with the audit." Frank's tone turned threatening. "You have obligations to this company, young lady. Your employment agreement was terminated when you fired me," I interrupted. "And any non-compete clauses are likely unenforceable given the circumstances of my termination." My attorney was quite clear on that point. "Attorney?" Frank's voice rose. "You've consulted an attorney against your own family business?" "I consulted an attorney to understand my rights after being unjustly terminated. That's what prudent professionals do." After Frank's call, things escalated quickly. Dad left 3 voicemails, each more desperate than the last. The final one, late Friday night, had none of his usual controlled demeanor. "Miranda, please. We can discuss board positions and titles later. Right now, we're hours away from losing everything. Not just my investment or your job, the livelihoods of over 100 people. People you worked alongside for years. Do you want that on your conscience?" It was the first argument that genuinely gave me pause. The frontline employees at Henderson weren't responsible for my parents' decisions. Many had families, mortgages, children in college. Could I really stand by while their jobs were jeopardized? I called Grandpa Stanley for perspective. "They're manipulating you with guilt," he said bluntly after hearing the messages. "Using the employees as human shields for their bad decisions. But that doesn't make the impact on those employees any less real," I countered. "True," he acknowledged. "But ask yourself this. If you bail them out now without structural changes, what happens the next time they make poor decisions? You become the permanent safety net for their mismanagement." His wisdom, as always, cut to the heart of the matter. "So what would you do?" "I'd make sure any help I provided came with conditions that protected both you and those employees long-term. Don't just patch the hole in their boat. Make sure they can't drill new ones." The next morning, Saturday, an unexpected visitor arrived at my apartment. Ethan, looking sleep-deprived and stressed, stood awkwardly at my door. "Can we talk?" he asked, unable to meet my eyes directly. "Not as company representatives. Just cousins." I let him in, curious despite my resentment. "I never wanted your job," he blurted once we were seated. "Uncle Walter and my dad presented it as a temporary position to help with a transition period. I didn't know they'd fired you until it was done." "And yet you took the position," I observed. "I know how it looks," he sighed. "But they said you'd received other offers, that you were leaving anyway, and they needed someone who understood the family business culture." "And you believed that?" "At first. Then things started not adding up. The team's reaction. The technical issues I couldn't handle. The way Uncle Walter and Dad were rushing through system changes before some deadline they wouldn't explain. I studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine or another manipulation." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm in over my head, and people's jobs are at risk. And because I found something you should see." He pulled out his phone and showed me an email thread between my father and Takura Systems acquisition team, dated 2 weeks before my firing. The subject line, "Transition Plan for Henderson Acquisition." "They were planning to sell before they ever fired you," Ethan said quietly. "I was never meant to be a real replacement. Just a placeholder during the sale process who wouldn't object to their methods." The confirmation of Stanley's information still hit hard. "Why are you showing me this? You're betraying your father." Ethan looked pained. Because this isn't what family businesses are supposed to be. My dad has always been about quick profits, but your parents built something real, something that helps people and provides good jobs. I didn't sign up to help dismantle that. His visit provided the final piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just about my firing anymore. It was about the future of a company that employed over 100 people, that provided valuable services to clients who depended on our systems, that represented my grandfather's legacy. Whatever I decided needed to consider all these stakeholders, not just my justified anger at my parents. As Ethan left, my phone rang again. Dad's number, but when I answered, it was his voice and Mom's on speakerphone. "Miranda," Dad began, his tone more conciliatory than I'd ever heard. "We've discussed your conditions. We can offer you a director of engineering position reporting directly to the board with—" "Not good enough," I interrupted. "CTO with board seat, or I don't come back." And I want it in writing, with guarantees against future termination without cause. "Miranda, be reasonable," Mom pleaded. "The board structure can be changed with a vote," I finished for her. "You, Dad, and Uncle Frank control those votes. Stop pretending your hands are tied." After a lengthy silence, Dad spoke again. "We need an answer by tomorrow. The government auditors arrive Monday morning. Then you have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to send me the offer I outlined. After that, I move forward with my own plans." As I ended the call, Derek looked at me with concern. "Are you actually considering going back?" I stared out the window at the city skyline, weighing all I had learned. "I'm considering all options that protect the employees and clients who trusted me. But whatever happens, it won't be on their terms anymore." The decision point had arrived. By this time tomorrow, I would either be preparing to return to Henderson under my conditions or launching Phoenix Engineering Solutions as direct competition. Either way, the family business would never be the same. 9 a.m. Sunday came and went without any contract from my parents. At 9:05, I texted Derek, "We're moving forward with Phoenix." By 9:15, I had emails drafted to Catherine at Meridian Ventures confirming our interest in seed funding and to the former team members who had expressed interest in joining my new venture. By noon, things were in motion. Catherine arranged an emergency meeting with her investment committee for Monday morning. I finalized the business plan with Derek's help, emphasizing our ability to rapidly develop a next-generation security platform based on my expertise and industry connections. "We should secure office space as soon as possible," Derek suggested. "Something visible, but not extravagant. Appearance matters to investors and potential clients." I nodded, adding it to our growing to-do list. "We'll need to be careful about intellectual property. Everything we develop needs to be clearly distinct from Henderson systems." "Your attorney already confirmed you're on solid ground there," Derek reminded me. "The core concepts came from your graduate work, and you're not using any proprietary code." The sense of liberation was intoxicating. After years of building someone else's dream, I was finally creating my own. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to determine. That afternoon, Grandpa Stanley called with unexpected news. "I want to invest in whatever you're building next," he said without preamble. "You don't even know what it is yet," I laughed. "I know you're building it, and that's enough. $500,000, no strings attached except regular updates on progress. Consider it seed money from someone who believes in you more than that venture capital firm ever could." His offer brought tears to my eyes. "Grandpa, that's your retirement fund." "Part of it," he corrected. "And what better way to spend it than investing in my granddaughter, who shares my values about business and family? Besides, I expect a healthy return. You always were the smart one in the family." With Stanley's commitment, our Monday meeting with Meridian took on new significance. We weren't just seeking funding. We were bringing our own capital and looking for strategic partners. Throughout Sunday, messages continued trickling in from Henderson. Jamie reported that the engineering team had been called in for weekend work, attempting to patch the security vulnerabilities before the government audit. Dad left another voicemail, his tone now angry rather than pleading. "Your silence is irresponsible and childish. There are real consequences to your actions, Miranda. People who worked alongside you for years could lose their livelihoods because of your pride. I deleted it without responding. The manipulation tactics were becoming transparent, alternating between guilt, anger, and occasional half-hearted concessions, all without addressing the fundamental issues of trust and respect. Monday dawned bright and clear, a perfect metaphor for my new beginning. The meeting with Meridian's investment committee went better than we'd anticipated. Catherine had prepared them well, and they responded enthusiastically to our presentation. "We're prepared to offer $3 million in series of funding," the committee chair announced after brief deliberation, with standard performance milestones and board representation. It was a strong vote of confidence in both the business concept and my leadership. With Stanley's seed money and Meridian's investment, Phoenix Engineering Solutions had become real overnight. As we left the meeting, Derek squeezed my hand. "Congratulations, CEO. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I admitted. "Exhilarating." "Right." We celebrated with lunch at Riverside Grill, where we'd had our first date years ago. The restaurant overlooked the same river that flowed past Henderson's headquarters a few miles upstream, a connection I found symbolically fitting. Our celebration was interrupted by a text from Jamie. "Government auditors here. Complete disaster. 3 major security vulnerabilities identified in first hour. Your dad looks like he's going to have a stroke." I felt a complex mix of vindication and concern. While part of me wanted my parents to face consequences for their actions, I took no joy in the company's potential failure and its impact on employees. As we finished lunch, another text arrived, this one from a number I didn't recognize. "Miranda Henderson seen meeting with Meridian Ventures executives. Sources suggest new security venture in development. Industry watching closely." Attached was a photo of Derek and me entering Meridian's building that morning. Someone was tracking my movements and leaking information to the business press. I had a strong suspicion who might be behind it. Sure enough, Dad called less than an hour later. "Is it true?" he demanded without greeting. "You're starting a competing business while we're fighting for survival." "I'm pursuing my career after being unjustly terminated," I replied evenly. "Something you encouraged me to do in the company-wide email announcing my departure, if I recall correctly. This is different, and you know it. This is deliberate sabotage of a family business."
"No, Dad."
"Sabotage would be if I'd corrupted the systems before leaving or stolen client information. I've done neither. I'm simply using my expertise, which exists in my head, not your servers, to build something new. You know the government contract was essential to our survival."
"Ida."
"I also know you were planning to sell the company to Takura even before firing me." Ethan showed me the emails. His momentary silence confirmed the truth. Ethan had no right to access those communications. "And you had no right to discard me after 12 years of loyalty. Yet here we are." I kept my voice steady despite the anger rising within me. "The government contract is in jeopardy because you replaced experienced leadership with an unqualified relative and pushed through changes without proper testing. Those were your choices, not mine." The conversation ended with his threat of legal action for tortious interference and my calm reminder that any lawsuit would involve discovery of all their communications regarding the planned sale and my termination. As I hung up, Derek looked concerned. "They're panicking." "Good," I said, though without the satisfaction I'd expected to feel. "Maybe now they'll understand what they've thrown away." That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at my apartment. Cousin Ethan again, looking even more distressed than during his previous visit. "The government audit was a disaster," he confirmed without preamble. "They're giving us 10 days to fix the vulnerabilities or they terminate the contract." "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I've resigned," he said simply. "I told Uncle Walter I wasn't qualified for the position and never should have accepted it. I also told him I showed you the Takura emails." I was genuinely surprised. That took courage. He shrugged uncomfortably. "Maybe. Or maybe just a late developing conscience. Anyway, I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family supports what they did to you." After Ethan left, I received a flurry of texts from other team members at Henderson. Word of my new venture had spread internally, and several engineers expressed interest in joining Phoenix if positions became available. The most surprising message came from Rachel in HR, who had been present at my termination. "What happened to you is wrong. I've been documenting questionable terminations and policy violations for months. If you need a witness for anything, I'm willing to talk." The following morning, a business journal published an article titled, "Henderson Tech Solutions Faces Government Contract Crisis Amid Leadership Exodus." The piece detailed the failed security audit, Ethan's resignation, and mentioned industry rumors of additional staff departures following the controversial termination of former Chief Engineering Officer Miranda Henderson, daughter of the company's owners. I hadn't leaked any of this information, but the truth was emerging anyway, as it often does in tight-knit industry circles. Dad's next call came that afternoon, his tone now desperate rather than threatening. "The government has given us a deadline. 10 days to fix the security vulnerabilities or they terminate the contract."
"I'm aware," he replied.
"You're aware?" he repeated incredulously. "How are you? Never mind. Miranda, we need to talk face to face. No lawyers, no HR, just family. Can you come to the house tonight?" I considered refusing but decided that a direct confrontation might provide the closure I needed, regardless of the outcome.
Fine.
7 o'clock. Derek insisted on driving me. "I don't trust them not to manipulate you when you're alone. I'll wait in the car if you want privacy, but I'm going to be nearby." I was grateful for his protective instinct, though I felt stronger and clearer about my boundaries than I had in years. The family home where I'd grown up looked exactly the same, a sprawling colonial that had been renovated and expanded as the business grew successful. Mom answered the door, immediately trying to embrace me. I stepped back, maintaining physical distance that matched the emotional gulf between us. Dad waited in his study, looking older than I remembered. Uncle Frank was noticeably absent. "Where's Frank?" I asked as I took a seat across from them, deliberately choosing the chair rather than the couch where Mom patted a spot beside her. "This is immediate family only," Dad replied. "Just us." Interesting distinction, I observed coolly, considering how quickly family became just business last month. Dad sighed heavily. "Miranda, we made a mistake." "Is that what you need to hear?" "We made a serious error in judgment, and now we're asking for your help to fix it." It was the closest thing to an admission I'd heard yet, but still carefully worded to minimize their culpability. "What exactly are you offering?" I asked. "Return as Chief Engineering Officer, full restoration of benefits and seniority, 20% salary increase, and a seat on the executive committee," Dad outlined. "Not good enough," I replied immediately. "I want CTO title, with full board membership, not just executive committee. And I want it legally guaranteed that my position cannot be terminated without cause and majority board approval, not just your vote and Mom's." Mom looked ready to object, but Dad raised a hand to stop her. "We can't give you that kind of ironclad employment guarantee. No company does that for any position." Then add a golden parachute clause. If I'm terminated without documented cause, I receive 3 years' salary and benefits as severance. I knew this was standard protection for C-suite executives in larger companies. 1 year, Dad countered. 3 years, non-negotiable. And I want Grandpa Stanley reinstated as an active board member. Their expressions told me this was the most difficult condition. Stanley would serve as a check on their authority, which was precisely why I demanded it. "We need an answer about the government contract situation immediately," Dad pressed. "The other terms can be negotiated." "No," I said firmly. "All terms agreed to in writing before I step foot in that office. I'm not saving you so you can discard me again when it's convenient. While we negotiate, the company could fail," Mom pleaded. "Is that what you want?" "What I wanted was to be treated with respect after 12 years of loyalty," I replied evenly. "What I wanted was for my family to value me as more than a disposable resource. What happens to the company now depends entirely on your choices, not mine." Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You have other options now, don't you? This new company people are talking about." "Yes," I acknowledged. Phoenix Engineering Solutions is moving forward with significant investment backing. Whether I continue as its CEO or return to Henderson depends entirely on the terms you offer. You would compete directly against your family? Mom asked, sounding genuinely shocked. You fired your daughter after 12 years of dedicated service, I countered. Which is worse, exactly? The meeting ended in a stalemate. They needed time to consider my terms, and I was in no rush to rescue them from consequences of their own making. As I left, Dad called after me. The board meets tomorrow at noon. We'll have an answer for you by 3. Derek was waiting in the car as promised. How did it go? They're desperate, I said, fastening my seatbelt. But still trying to maintain control. We'll know tomorrow if they're desperate enough to accept my terms. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed my power in this situation. I was no longer the victim of their decisions, but an equal player making my own choices. Phoenix was real, with funding secured and talented people eager to join. Henderson might be saved or might fail, but either outcome would now be shaped by my terms, not theirs. The path forward was becoming clear, and for the first time since that terrible day in the boardroom, I felt genuinely excited about the future. The call came at exactly 3 o'clock the next day. Not from Dad, as I'd expected, but from the family attorney, Richard Fleming, who had handled Henderson business matters for 20 years. Miranda, the board has reviewed your conditions for returning to Henderson Technologies, he began formally. And I prompted when he paused. They decided to decline your terms regarding board membership and termination protections. They are, however, prepared to offer the CTO position with executive committee membership and a 15% salary increase. Despite anticipating this outcome, the finality of it still stung. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Richard. Please inform the board that I wish them luck with their business challenges. Miranda, his tone softened slightly, speaking unofficially, I urged them to accept your terms. For what it's worth, I think they're making another mistake. Thank you for your candor, I replied. But this decision actually simplifies things for me. Within the hour, I signed the final paperwork with Meridian Ventures, officially launching Phoenix Engineering Solutions with $3 million in series of funding plus Grandpa Stanley's seed investment. By the end of the week, we'd secured office space in the downtown tech corridor, smaller than Henderson's headquarters, but more modern and deliberately visible from the main highway. Jamie and 4 other key engineers from my former team submitted their resignations at Henderson and accepted positions at Phoenix. I was careful to establish clear protocols. No proprietary information from Henderson would be used, no client solicitation during their notice periods, and all non-compete clauses would be legally reviewed before they joined. 10 days after the failed government audit, Henderson Tech Solutions received the official notification that their Department of Energy contract would not be renewed due to critical security vulnerabilities and insufficient remediation. The contract, worth nearly $7 million annually, had represented almost 30% of the company's reliable revenue. News spread quickly through industry channels. Henderson stock, which had been listed on a small regional exchange, dropped 17% in a single day. Clients began calling Phoenix almost immediately, despite our having no formal product offerings yet, just a reputation and a team with proven expertise. 2 weeks into the launch of Phoenix, I received an unexpected call from Takura Systems, the company that had been negotiating to acquire Henderson. Ms. Henderson, this is Victor Albright, CEO of Takura. I believe we had recruitment discussions some years ago. We did, I confirmed. Twice, as I recall. Indeed. Well, I'm calling because we've terminated our acquisition discussions with Henderson Tech Solutions due to some discrepancies in their representations about product stability and key personnel. I remained silent, letting him continue. However, we remain very interested in the SecureNet technology approach. Given your new venture, I wondered if you might consider either a strategic partnership or potential acquisition discussions with Takura. The irony was almost too perfect. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Albright, but Phoenix is less than a month old. We're not looking for acquisition at this stage. though I'm open to discussing technology partnerships once our product line is established. Of course, he backpedaled smoothly. Perhaps we could schedule a preliminary discussion about potential collaboration models? No commitments, just exploration. I agreed to a meeting the following month, though I had no intention of selling Phoenix before it had even launched its first product. Still, industry connections were valuable, and keeping communication channels open was just good business. As Phoenix grew and took shape, Henderson continued its decline. Without the government contract and with clients increasingly nervous about system stability, they began layoffs. First 10 people, then 20, then a department-wide restructuring that eliminated nearly 30% of the workforce. Each announcement pained me. These were people I'd worked alongside, many of whom had families and mortgages. Yet I also recognized that this collapse stemmed from my parents' decisions, not mine. Phoenix hired as many qualified Henderson employees as we could reasonably absorb, focusing on those with specialized skills and strong ethics. 3 months after my firing, the Department of Energy reached out to Phoenix directly. "We've followed your new company with interest," explained the procurement director. "Given your team's expertise with security integration systems, we'd like to discuss a potential contract opportunity." The opportunity was smaller than Henderson's original contract, but designed as a proof of concept that could expand significantly if successful. It represented both validation and a chance to establish Phoenix as a serious contender in the government contracting space. The family fallout continued in parallel with these professional developments. Extended family members chose sides, with most aligning with my parents due to financial connections or simply avoiding conflict. Grandpa Stanley, however, became my most vocal advocate, telling anyone who would listen how proud he was of my courage and entrepreneurial spirit. "You're building something with integrity," he told me during one of our weekly dinners. "That matters more than keeping peace with people who didn't value you properly." 6 months after my firing, Henderson announced a strategic downsizing that would consolidate operations and focus on a narrower client base. Reading between the lines, they were shrinking to survive after losing major contracts and key personnel. That same week, Phoenix launched its first product, SecureLink, an advanced security integration platform that improved upon the concepts I developed at Henderson but with entirely new architecture and code. Early reviews from industry analysts were overwhelmingly positive, and our client list grew steadily. The confrontation I'd been anticipating finally occurred at Thanksgiving. Tradition dictated that all Henderson family members gather at my parents' home, but this year, most assumed I wouldn't attend. Instead, I arrived precisely on time, bringing Derek and a bottle of wine. The shock on faces as I entered the dining room was almost comical. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Uncle Frank nearly choked on his drink. Mom recovered first, rushing forward with forced brightness. "Miranda, we weren't sure you'd come."
It's so good to see you.
"Family is family," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear, even when business decisions get in the way. Dinner was a masterclass in awkward conversation, with relatives desperately avoiding any mention of Henderson Technologies or Phoenix. Until Uncle Frank, several drinks in, couldn't contain himself any longer. "So, Miranda, stealing clients from your family business now? That's your idea of success." The table fell silent. Mom looked mortified, Dad tense. "I don't need to steal clients, Uncle Frank," I replied calmly. "They come to us because we deliver what we promise." "Something Henderson stopped doing under your influence." "My influence?" he sputtered.
Yes.
"The company was doing fine until you convinced Dad to make those real estate investments that failed. Suddenly Henderson needed cash, and I was the most expensive salary to cut. Then you helped orchestrate the Tequila sale attempt, which fell through when they realized the product stability was dependent on people you'd fired. Those were your brilliant business strategies, weren't they?" Mom gasped. Several cousins stared with undisguised shock. Uncle Frank's face turned purple. "That's a lie. Walter, are you going to let her talk to me this way?" Dad surprised everyone by remaining silent, studying his plate. "It's not a lie," Grandpa Stanley spoke up from the end of the table. I've seen the emails, Frank. You pushed for all of it. The bad investments, Miranda's termination, the rush sale. And now you're upset because she succeeded despite your efforts to discard her. The truth hung in the air, impossible to dismiss. Dad finally looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time that evening. He's right, he admitted quietly. Frank convinced me we could get rich quick with those investments. When they failed, we needed to cut costs drastically and position for sale before creditors came calling. Miranda was... He struggled visibly. Collateral damage. Collateral damage, I repeated. Your daughter. Your chief engineering officer. The person who built your flagship product. Reduced to collateral damage in a failed get-rich-quick scheme. Uncle Frank stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here being blamed for Walter's decisions. He stormed out, followed quickly by his wife and children. After he left, the atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Mom's carefully maintained composure cracked, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to fire you, she confessed. I fought against it. But Frank convinced Walter our entire retirement was at risk if we didn't cut costs immediately and sell quickly. And you went along with it, I noted, not unkindly, but factually. Yes, she acknowledged. I was afraid. Afraid of losing everything, afraid of standing up to your father when he was so convinced Frank's plan was our only option. I failed you, and I'm so sorry. Her apology, though late, was at least sincere. Dad, however, remained stubbornly silent on that front, acknowledging the facts but not the emotional impact of their betrayal. As Derek and I prepared to leave, Mom embraced me tightly. Can we start again? Maybe have lunch sometime? We can try, I allowed. But trust takes time to rebuild. Dad approached awkwardly. Your company is doing well, I hear. It is, I confirmed. We just secured our first government contract. He nodded, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Pride, regret, and something like resignation. You always were the smartest one in the family. Not smart enough to see this coming, I replied, but smart enough to build something better afterward. He extended his hand formally, a businessman's gesture rather than a father's. I took it briefly, our relationship forever changed by his choices. 1 year after my firing, Phoenix Engineering Solutions had grown to 42 employees, with revenue projections exceeding first-year targets by 30%. We occupied 2 floors of our office building, with plans to expand further. The Department of Energy contract had been renewed and expanded, and we developed a reputation for both technical excellence and ethical business practices. Henderson Tech Solutions still existed, but in greatly diminished form. They'd sold their headquarters building and moved to smaller offices, focusing on legacy clients and managed services rather than product development. Dad had stepped down as CEO, though he and Mom retained majority ownership. They'd hired an outside executive to run day-to-day operations, someone with no family connections, but significant turnaround experience. My personal life had transformed as well. Derek and I were engaged, planning a small wedding for the spring. And after years of postponing family plans for the sake of Henderson, I was 4 months pregnant with our first child. Sitting in my office overlooking the city, one hand resting on my growing belly, I reflected on the painful journey that had led to this moment. The betrayal still hurt when I allowed myself to dwell on it, but its power over me had diminished. Phoenix wasn't built on revenge, though that emotion had certainly fueled its early days. It was built on a vision of what business could be when values and innovation drove decisions rather than fear and short-term thinking. I'd rehired Rachel from Henderson's HR department to help establish our company culture intentionally from the beginning. Together, we created policies that valued transparency, merit, and work-life balance. No family member would ever be hired or fired based on relationship rather than contribution, including any future children of mine who might someday want to join the company. My relationship with Mom had slowly begun to heal through monthly lunches and careful conversations that respected new boundaries. Dad remained more distant, our interactions primarily filtered through Mom or limited to brief exchanges at unavoidable family events. Grandpa Stanley had become a regular presence at Phoenix, not as an executive, but as a mentor and advisor whose wisdom we all valued. The greatest lesson from this painful chapter wasn't about business strategy or even family dynamics. It was about identity and resilience, discovering that who I was extended far beyond any title or company affiliation. Being fired from the family business had stripped away everything I thought defined me, forcing me to rebuild from fundamental values rather than external validation. As Phoenix grew and thrived, I made sure never to repeat my parents' mistake of valuing profit over people or confusing business decisions with personal worth. We built a company where no one was considered too expensive if they delivered genuine value, and where loyalty flowed in both directions. Sometimes the most painful endings create space for the most meaningful beginnings. In losing what I thought was my entire professional identity, I found something more authentic and ultimately more fulfilling. The family business had been my inheritance, but Phoenix was my creation, built not from obligation but from purpose. If you've ever experienced betrayal from those you trusted most or found yourself rebuilding after a devastating career setback, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Has karma ever delivered justice in your professional life? Did losing something important ultimately lead to something better? Like and subscribe if this journey resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our greatest strengths emerge from our most painful moments. Thank you for listening to my family revenge story. I hope it reminds you that your value isn't determined by those who failed to appreciate you, but by your courage to create something new from the ashes of disappointment.